Hello and welcome to This Week Back in the Day. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the USA 94 squad, which was selected by Jack Charlton on the 16th of May, 1994. I'm David, your host, joined as always by Martin. Martin, how are you doing? We're going way back in the Wayback Machine of Irish football.
Yeah, this is a fantastic time in Irish football, obviously. We had the amazing qualification campaign, seeing Windsor Park, the goal by the iconic Alan McLaughlin, much missed.
Yes.
Saw us qualify for USA 94. And yeah, an interesting squad that Jack picks here, giving a bit of youth a bit of chance, which he wasn't fantastically known for because he was very, very loyal. But yeah, it's an interesting one to go through.
We were still riding that crest of a wave that was the Charlton era, although some would say not as high as before, and we'll get into that now. Yes, as you said, Ireland had qualified for the Second World Cup in November 1993 after a 1-1 draw with Northern Ireland, and Peter Schmeichel, in my opinion, a very overrated goalkeeper, threw the ball into his own net in Seville. He did, though, didn't he? Yes, he did. God bless you, Peter Schmeichel. The team was selected by Jack in his holiday home in Ballina, but he wouldn't confirm it until the 3rd of June deadline, just in case of injury, that sort of stuff, which, no, fair enough. Jack was always the pragmatist. 8 days later, we were due to play Bolivia and Germany then 5 days after that, the 29th of May, the 24th and 29th of May, respectively. We were in the middle of a 3-game unbeaten streak since a 3-1 or a 1-3, for those of you OCD like myself, mauling by Spain in October 93. And of course, then we had the 1-1 in Belfast, 0-0 with Russia, and we would have the 1-0 victory in Tilburg, actually, against the Dutch, which was a rare win. Although that might give us a false sense of where we are. And we're going to get into that now. Going back to that mauling by Spain, Martin, if we had got a victory there, after drawing with them and almost beating them in Seville the year previous with a John Aldrich goal, wrongly disallowed, by the way, some people were saying at the time that maybe this Charlton team was over, really. I think that was Kevin Moran's last competitive game for Ireland. He was 37 at the time. And yeah, maybe people thought that the jig was up.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, we had a very, very experienced side now, and this is, again, the loyalty word that I said earlier. Jack's come from 88. That was the amazing time. 1990 World Cup, trying to qualify. We should have qualified for 92 as well. So that was a very strong qualification campaign, 91, 92, and still didn't get across the line. So it was going to be tough to qualify for World Cup 94, especially against the Spanish.
And Denmark, the European champions, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, to get there as we did, we nearly kind of blew it, but we got there in the end. And yeah, this team, though, is aging. That's the thing. It is aging. Mixed loyalty to some of the older guard who he's had fantastic times with. It must be very hard as an international manager where you've had those days in the sun and you create that bond and you've got them playing for you. And they had all brought in by this time to Jack's philosophy, as it were, that they were going to have good days under Jack, and they would have wanted that going. And it's always hard for a manager to kind of end that career of someone who's been so good for you. And, that was the name of it.
Although looking back in the Charlton years, some players, Kevin Moran, did say he could be ruthless when he wanted to be. I mean, Liam Brady in 89 against West Germany, hauled off after 23 minutes. He could be ruthless, but he was mostly loyal. If you were doing the business for him, he was mostly loyal. So we're going to get into the squad here. 2 goalkeepers, which is a bit mad, but that seemed to be a theme. To be fair, we didn't really have anyone else. Jerry Payton had long retired. Mark Beanie, he was the guy at Leeds. He was in the Sticker album, which I'm sure you didn't get over in England. The Star, the Irish Daily Star sticker album that everyone collected. And Mark Beanie was in it with Bonner, who was selected, who was 34 at the time, unattached, by the way. He was just released by Lou McCarry, Celtic. And Alan Kelly was 25 at Sheffield United. But yeah, the third goalkeeper was apparently Mark Beanie, but he actually wasn't eligible. But anyway, so yeah, Bonner and Alan Kelly were Jack's goalkeepers. Very interesting one here. And to be fair, you do speak of loyalty here. Packy Bonner, not playing for a club, 34, but yet he's still in the squad as a number one.
Yeah, I mean, look, only the fact that he's not attached is a strange one. I think 34 is not massively old for a goalkeeper, and it's a strange one. Lou Macari at Celtic didn't really work out, did it? So there might have been a bit of a clash there, and obviously we know how it kind of evolved then with Paki Bonner going back there and stuff. So it's a funny one with the goalkeepers, because the age profile is very, Paki Bonner's going there as number one, isn't he? 34, is he got the experience and stuff, and Alan Kelly 25,
played all the games.
Yeah,
in the qualifying campaign.
So I think it is a bit of loyalty, but Paki, to be fair, at this stage, you got to remember as well the back pass has come in, hasn't it? And he wasn't a goalkeeper. You've got to think of a goalkeeper in the sense that transition didn't really help him, I don't think.
No, but I think Jack always liked him because he did I love Paki. He's a legend, nice man, lovely man. We met him a while back, but he wasn't the best. Let's be honest, he wasn't. He's known for his heroics in Stuttgart in '88. He fine game against England, by the way, and of course his heroics in Genoa in 1990 against Romania. But then the very next game, his parry, which led from the good parry, as the late Jimmy McGee would say, from Donadoni, shot to Toto Scalacci, just a tap in. And we won't go past USA 94, but I'm sure there's ones that people at home now going, the obvious one, which would happen in that tournament. And also the 3-1 in the 3-1 lead that we blew away in Poznan when we were playing Poland, which actually led to us not qualifying for Euro 92. So he had lots of gaffes in him, but I think what Jack really liked was the fact that he had a kick out like a cannon. He just so straight. He actually probably in Italian 90, I think he assisted. He would get an assist, wouldn't he, for 2 goals?
Yeah.
Quinn's against Holland and Sheedy's against England. So it's kind of a balancing act. And I think Jack really liked that, didn't he? It's funny.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
When you mentioned there about the back pass rule, the game, I think the first Ireland game with that was Denmark away in Telia Park in Copenhagen. Where we first met, actually, Martin, by the way.
Yeah,
Copenhagen.
We'll always have Copenhagen.
We'll always have Copenhagen. Me walking in with my white shell jacket, the Italian 90, the white one with the green stripes, absolutely just turning heads, going across whatever that square is in Copenhagen. Everyone eyeing me up, making me offers. I think I was offered like €80 from a shirt. I was like, would you ever fuck off? But that was the first game, I believe, the first competitive game anyway, that we had the pass back rule in 92. And Dunphy at the time was actually saying that would help us because, we're all about hitting it first time, hitting it long, getting it out of there. So maybe it wouldn't inhibit us as much as people would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive game changer for some of our younger listeners, the back pass rule coming in. I think probably Dunphy's thinking that we're going to play a bit more and maybe not hoop it as much.
Bless him.
It might be in Paki Bonner's hands as much. But, we were going to use that weapon of the kick which is successful even now. If you look at it, you've got a goalkeeper who can kick it long. That's still there. You can do it. It is a weapon. And it was one that obviously went on to use for great effect over the years, as we saw in a way, digressing a little bit. But Shane Long, it was a big long kick, wasn't it, against the Germans that was launched up the field, and Shane Long goes onto it and scores against Germany. So, there is a part for that in the game. A goalkeeper who's got that in their locker. But I think that's what he did like about having Paki in the squad. And again, the big word I can't get away from is the loyalty. He's going to look after him. He's probably putting him in the shop window for the being released by Celtic. I wouldn't think that was massively popular within the Irish squad as well, that Paki's such an endeared legend with Celtic, been there many, many years, and he's been released like that. I can't remember actually at the time what that was all about, but
but he was re-signed straight.
Yeah, he was re-signed.
He was re-signed. I don't think Lou Macari was Lou Macari the manager at the time when he was re-signed.
I think he was. Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure actually. No, I don't know. I wouldn't know enough about Celtic to know.
Well, it's a good. It's a good thing we're not doing a podcast about Irish football, isn't it? I'll tell you what. I'm going to find out. I'm pulling an audible. I'm going on
search engine. Are you?
I am indeed. He was manager up to 94. March, April, May. Yeah. So basically, Macari released him, and then another guy took over. Macari was fired. Yeah, he was actually fired in June.
Oh, there you
go. So there you go. So They got him in for another couple of years. I think he was goalkeeper there for till about 96, 97. Right, so moving on to the defenders. This is where it gets a little bit tastier. And this is a hell of a back line, to be fair, on paper. But we had Dennis Irwin, 28 for Man United. Gary Kelly, 19 for Leeds, of course. Paul McGrath, 34 for Aston Villa. Kevin Moran, 38, Blackburn. Phil Babb, 23. He was at Coventry at the time, ahead of his move to Liverpool. Alan Carnahan, God bless you, Man City. He was 27. Terry Phelan, friend of the pod, an actual friend of the pod. He was 27. He was at Man City. And then you had Eddie McGoldrick, the original McGoldrick, the real McGoldrick, 29-year-old at Arsenal. Quite an eclectic mix there. You know, you got Kelly, who's 19. You have Babb, who's 23. But then you also have, you know, somebody who's probably old enough to be Gary Kelly's dad with Kevin Moran. And I'm sure you make a fantastic father as well. Kevin Moran wouldn't feature in the World Cup. I think his fate was sealed, wasn't it, after the 3-1 hammering to Spain that time in Dublin.
Yeah, I mean, look, what an iconic player though Kevin Moran was.
Yes.
You know, been to the Euros, been to the World Cup. First player to be sent off in an FA Cup final as well, 1985. Play with Dublin as well, All Ireland finals. So yeah, like, as I said, iconic. And yeah, 38 going to a World Cup. I think he was one of the oldest players, wasn't he, to go to that World Cup?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I
think he's on the Italian team.
Yeah, I think he's on the way out though, isn't he, of his football career? It's the very end of it, and he's off. You know, I think he's going to be looking to retire in a sense. So, that was a speculation I recall at the time. So yeah, he'd done very, very well. But you know, he's been very, very kind of loyal, hasn't he? There, Jack bringing him along, but for the experience, I mean, you know, McGrath, we know I think he'd actually just signed an extension to his Villa deal. And that's only a few years on from him winning the PFA Player of the Year, Paul McGrath. So, you know, he would obviously prove at that World Cup what an incredible player he still was. We know that he had injury problems, the knees and things like that. But
he had an infection in his shoulder, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he was actually a doubt for that World Cup. Because I think in the 94 Coca-Cola Cup final, the League Cup or the Haribo Cup for you kids listening now, where he beat Man United 3-1, just saying. Andrew Kaczewski, you remember he got sent off, didn't he?
He got sent off, yeah. Man United won the double that year. They could have won a treble, basically.
Could have.
Domestic.
Would have. Didn't.
No.
What a shame. Yeah, he played in that. And I think after that, or during that, he had an issue with his left arm, because you actually see him during the World Cup, spoiler alert, but in 94, you actually see him kind of holding that one arm. And he's actually quite svelte, isn't he? He's not as big and muscular as he used to be, or he normally is, but he had this infection and basically played with one arm. Just incredible. Shoddy knees, 34, searing heat, one arm.
Baggio in his pocket. Spoiler.
Roberto Baggio in his pocket. Incredible stuff. Another defender who was actually another stalwart of the team and a hero of Italia 90 was ruled out. He had a very slim chance of making it, and that was David O'Leary. He had signed for Leeds, actually. He'd left Arsenal the previous year. And he still is Arsenal's record, at time of recording anyway, record appearance holder. But yeah, I think he was trying to make the team. It was never really going to happen, was it? I think Moran was... I think when you go into a World Cup, there's only room for one token player. And let's be honest, Kevin Moran was there as a token player. Like, he was never going to play. You know, I think he'd retire that year, actually, as well. And David O'Leary was the same. I think he'd retire. I think he retired the next year, didn't he? 95. He made a very, very few, literally a handful of appearances before injury sort of just took over. But yeah, I think O'Leary, it would have been too much to have Moran and O'Leary. Great, legendary players, but they were never going to play at all. We're going to move it on to the midfielders. First up, we have Roy Keane, 22, Man United. A World Cup he'd actually play in.
And also on the back of winning a double in his first season with Man United as well.
Not a treble, though.
Not a treble. No, he'd go on and do that a few years later.
Well, he wouldn't, though, would he? Because he wouldn't play.
No,
he wouldn't play in the final now, would he? And I think he came off after a couple of minutes in the final against Newcastle, the FA Cup.
Still played, didn't he?
For how many minutes?
Doesn't matter. He got crocked, didn't he? Gary Speed did him.
Yeah. Good on you, Gary Speed.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, welcome to the Irish Football Podcast where we love Irish football players. Jesus.
God. No, we listen here on This Week Back in the Day and the Green Machine podcast. We say it how it is, and it goes well with some people, and it goes up other people's arses sideways. We don't care. And then a real legend of the midfield, Ronnie Whelan, 32, still at Liverpool, but he wouldn't be for long. I think actually he got transferred after this. He was offered he was offered a 1-year deal at Liverpool, and he turned it down because he wanted a 2-year deal. And he said no. And he went back and he thought, you know what? I'll take the 1-year deal. And they actually rescinded that, which I thought, all joking aside, a disgraceful way to treat a legend, really, Martin, wasn't it? To do that to a guy who was at the club since 1981.
Yeah, terrible ways for it to end for him there. And what an iconic player again, Ronnie Whelan was, come 88, one of the best ever goals for Ireland. Played at obviously World Cup as well. So yeah, very sad to see the way it ended at Liverpool. But yeah, look, he was definitely going to be in the Ireland squad. I thought here, 32. I know he's getting on a bit, but very experienced and
only brought in as cover. I was looking at this here. He was only brought in as cover, which is when you think like 88. Here was a guy that was pivotal that game against the Soviet Union. Him and Kevin Sheedy, because Paul McGrath was injured, so he didn't play in the game against the Soviet Union. And, Jack fancied him as a midfielder back then when he was 28. And Ronnie Whelan and Kevin Sheedy running that midfield. Just two technically very gifted players. Probably Ronnie a bit more defensively minded at that stage because that's where Kenny Dalglish played him. It was funny, wasn't he? He was brought in as a left winger, wasn't he? A left attacking midfielder. But I just love Ronnie Whelan, as you could tell. But he was only brought in as cover with John Sheridan. For Townsend and Keane in case they got injured, which brings us to our next midfielder, John Sheridan, 29, Sheffield Wednesday. Then you had Andy Townsend, who was the captain as well, 30, going on 31 at Aston Villa. Steve Staunton was a midfielder at this stage. He would have been a left winger. He was at Villa, 25. Ray Houghton, also at Villa, 32. Was a bit of a doubt, actually, I think, for this squad. He'd sort of fallen out of favour. Wasn't doing enough. I think he had a bit of a fallout, didn't he, with Jack in Windsor Park. Jack always says when he took Ray Houghton off, and Ray's like, "Oh, I'm the only one getting chances," and Jack says, "You're the only one missing chances." Which
typical Jack, that.
Typical Jack, but yeah, he wasn't guaranteed either. Ray Houghton, he was on a bit of a downward curve here too. Jason McAteer, 23, at Bolton. He would of course get a move to Liverpool later on. The late great Alan McLaughlin, who got us to the World Cup, 27 at Portsmouth. It's funny because McAteer, it was actually a toss-up between him and Liam O'Brien, but he felt that Jason McAteer would enjoy the experience, but probably wouldn't feature. Which, of course, he would because of the heat and that kind of stuff. But it's mad, isn't it? Like, you've already got Bab, Kelly, and McAteer, the three amigos who never featured in a single qualifying match and only made their debut that year. And
yeah, but again, that's very clever of Jack though, because that's him preparing, and again, he's very underestimated as a coach and manager. That he knows the conditions, and he's probably knowing that the younger players are going to have a bit more energy and fitness about them, and be able to cope with that, with the kind of the adrenaline, the plan of the World Cup. And yeah, like bringing in McAteer is kind of ingenious in a way. He'd had a really good season, hadn't he?
Yeah.
I think in the League Cup that year, they've done very well in particular. And yeah, I think it's just a testament to Jack, knowing his squad and getting the balance right, really, that he's giving opportunities to the young lads, but still being very loyal to some of the others. And it's kind of worked out with him quite well. Some of the injuries as well, kind of in a way, all right, wouldn't have been great for him missing Quinny, but it's worked out that he's been able to bring others in as well.
Yeah. Speaking of which, moving to the forwards, Niall Quinn was ruled out on the 1st of December 93 as Club Man City didn't think he'd make it. Which actually Quinn came back and said that he would have, but City just didn't want him to go. That's mad, that, isn't it? That would never happen now.
No, I don't think you would have that. Well, you wouldn't have that power now. Probably Quinn's age at the time as well. It would have been the player really pulling out the stops, wouldn't it? To say, I'm going to the World Cup, I don't get many opportunities to go. And it would be club versus country row there, and I don't know really how Quinny didn't win that one.
Yeah, I think I think we're still in this period though. We're still old football, new football, aren't we?
Yeah.
There's still that balance there, 3 points for a win.
Yeah.
Hadn't even come in for the qualifying campaign. It wouldn't be till the Euro '96 one. It's really strange actually. And when you look at the beginning of this campaign, which began in the summer of '92, before Euro '92, and you had Mick McCarthy playing, you had Kevin Sheedy playing. These guys like of a bygone era who wouldn't be anywhere near the squad. It's kind of sad in a way, really, isn't it? Like when you look at it. I'm trying to think of another few players because obviously you got 3 newbies coming in, so it obviously had to be 3 others missing out. Chris Morris, I think, he was phased out at this stage. I mean, Dennis Heron, come on, but all these kind of old guys from Euro '88 and Italy '90, they all started this campaign, but they would fall off the train as it would the closer we got to America. Also, the other forwards: Tony Cascarino, 31 at Chelsea; John Aldridge, 35 at Tranmere. Don't think he was player manager at the time, but he would be very soon after this. Tommy Coyne, 31, Motherwell. David Kelly, 28. I have him down as Motherwell. He wasn't Motherwell at the time, was he?
Wolves.
Wolves. Thank you.
Yeah.
and how were you able to correct me so quickly, Martin? To tell everybody at home.
Thanks to Clive Tilsley's wonderful match day chart. His preparation for the commentary chart. So I've got it from Italy, Republic of Ireland, and yeah, that's where you get a lot of stats and things from that, to be honest. And yeah, that's where I got that information, Dave.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clive, for correcting Dave.
God bless you, Clive. It doesn't happen often, but fair play. So the average age of the squad was 28.6, with 9 players over 30. That's mad. I mean, you're going to a country like America in the middle of the summertime, which is also mad. New York, Florida, crazy stuff. Before this, Jack had actually missed a sports science conference with all the managers were invited to, to talk nutrition and to talk about the weather and stuff. Some of the journalists he just didn't bother. But Jack would say in his book that he had a bit of a breakdown, actually. His mind just became overloaded. That was his reason.
It's an interesting one, though, isn't it? Because if you think of Jack's career, I mean, I was just reading the chart there, Clive Tilsley, and how late Jack came to football as an international player. Obviously, he was 30 years old when Jack came into the England squad and obviously won a World Cup in '66. But I think he went to Mexico in '70, where England kind of floundered in the heat. So you would have thought from that experience to know that, the neighbouring countries are hosting a World Cup, and you would have thought, that was going to be very important, the sports science aspect of it. And you maybe should have shown a bit more interest. Or is that, again, old school FAI? I don't want to bash them, but, it's again, we often did things, didn't we, as an FAI back then, or even now sometimes, we just weren't prepared for it. The way we would prepare and have all bases covered now for a World Cup. What did we really do any different from, we probably went into the World Cup in 1990. And I'm reading a lot about this at the moment, 88, 90 and 94, just a World Cup in the background in preparation. But, we're very much stuck in the kind of mode of it worked that time where we don't need to change anything. And I think that's kind of something that perhaps we had then in 94, that it's just a World Cup when really you have to prepare a bit more properly.
Yeah. Yet again, I think it goes back to old football and new football sort of interlocking. It's a real, for me, I think this is a real pivotal moment, I think, in football. And actually, I think this tournament broke Jack, to be honest. To quote Eamon Dunphy, he said the same thing. It broke Jack, this tournament, because it wasn't the game he remembered. It became a lot more officious, didn't it, at the World Cup? We won't go too much into it. Obviously, we'll do a whole podcast on that. But, the back pass rule will come in, which is ironic because of teams like Ireland and Italian 90, you could pass it back, he'd pick it up, and then Bonner would kick it out of his hands. I think this was sort of, it became a little bit more officious, became a little bit more technical. The sort of magic sponge element of it was going. The game was changing. Like Brian Clough had retired the year previous. So these old characters, and that was Jack's era. And I think it was moving on past him a little bit. It was going to a place that he didn't particularly like. I just imagine what you think of it now. Where football is.
And again, some of the players as well, though. They're all coming to the end of their career. They're coming. It's always interesting looking back at these, these tournaments and games and stuff, and you see a player. It must have been a massive. Some of them players are probably relieved in a sense that their game and their success in their careers, they might have had limitations as players technically, and would they have been able to adapt and been as proficient?
Yeah.
With the back pass rule coming in, when would they have had careers basically when you've got to play a bit now? So some of them are probably a bit relieved as well.
It's
ironic. A quicker young man's game, wasn't it? I think
it's ironic though, isn't it? Because with the back pass, if you looked at an Ireland team, and I'm going off on one here now, but if you look back at the Ireland team, maybe of the Ireland back four we could have had if it wasn't for injuries and arguments and team selection at Euro 88, you could have had David O'Leary, Paul McGrath, Mark Lawrenson, and possibly Jim Beglin, 4 ball-playing defenders. It wouldn't have been a problem, would it? You just rolled it out to them, they could pass their way out of trouble. But at this stage, obviously, Paul McGrath still incredibly skillful. We all know the goal that should have been against the Netherlands.
No, I would just say about the strikers. I mean, the age profile of them's there, but I mean, I'm nicking the information from these chart, but I know John Aldridge would go on and score and be a record goal scorer for a while, but at that stage, he's got 13 goals. Cascarino's got 12. The record that was like 13 and 57 appearances. Cascarino's got 12 and 50. Tommy Coyne had only had 14 games, but he got 4 goals, and he was probably a bit of a surprise player in a sense that he'd come quite late to it. He's only got 14 caps by that time.
He was apparently the fourth choice striker. I mean, if Quinn's there, he's not getting in. Yeah,
and yet you see, I know, spoiler alert again, but like what he come and offered the team and how he played at that World Cup, it was so important as well. And fair play to him. He put in a great performance
against Italy.
Italy. Worth discussing another time, really, because Jesus, he really left everything on the pitch that day. And
it was kind of funny, though, wasn't it? When we just going back on the sports science bit of it, and you rightly say about the heat of Mexico 70. I mean, there's a goal that we score against Mexico, and it's a fantastic team goal. John Aldridge's goal, actually, which is ironic, considering what he got up to. And you think this Ireland team could have done. It's an old team, but if this Ireland team, these players, that experience, that quality, I think if this was a World Cup that wasn't in the tropics in some parts, like Florida, and it was in Europe maybe, and just played a bit more of a patient style of football, I think this team could have gone a lot further. I think there's enough there because we beat Germany. We beat Germany in the next game and Bolivia. We beat Bolivia 1-0 and we beat Germany 2-0 in Germany. Actually, I remember watching that on a Sunday afternoon. Funny enough. So these lads knew how to win games. There's league winners there. There's league champions there. There's cup champions there. And I just think, with the right approach, this team could have gone a lot further. But I think the put them under pressure style in that heat with those players with that age was kamikaze football.
Yeah, that was it. And that's what he probably didn't gauge correctly. And whether that is down to the excellent point you made that you didn't go and look at the sports science aspect of it, because the water breaks had to be introduced, and he was going to war on the touchline later on,
throwing water bags at players.
I mean, it's look, again, we don't want to go into the tournament too much.
No.
Like we've had players missing the team photos and everything, didn't we? Because they were looking for hats and trying to come out and stay out of the heat. So crazy.
It required a bit more than water bags and a bit of sun cream on the nose. This did, and I think I think that part of the game sort of passed by the Irish team at the time. Anyway, listen, we're going to leave it there. Thank you, Martin, as always, with your lovely ball chart. And thank you at home for listening. And if you liked what you heard, please give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can also hit us a subscribe and give us a like on YouTube. And also, please head over to our website, thegreenmachinepodcast.com, thegreenmachinepodcast.com. We can get this episode and all of our other episodes there on the archive. And if you want to give us a little support, and help us continue the great work that we do. God's work, Martin, isn't it? This is God's work that we're doing.
It is for love.
For love, for the love of football. We don't get paid for this, not yet anyway. You can give us a support. You can head over to the shop there and support the podcast. Buy a shirt, buy a badge, buy a sticker, and just throw us a few bob. Be fantastic. But listen, thank you very much, and we do love your support as always. Anyway, we're going to see you on the next one. All the best.